Hello, Melanin Monarchy citizens. This is your Queen Monique here, and I'm coming to you with a special episode. This time, we're going to be discussing singers who left us far too soon. So, basically, these are artists who died before their music really had a huge impact on the music world. You could see that their music was going to have a huge impact, and sadly, they died. They died unexpectedly, so their life ended unexpectedly. Now, a lot of times when we think about artists who left us too soon, some people may even think about Michael Jackson, Prince, Whitney. Some people may think about Left Eye from TLC. They may think about a Tupac, a Biggie, a number of different artists that they deem have left before or just as they were getting started. But I wanted to come on here and just to focus on a few artists that are near and dear to me that I've been listening to since the 1990s, and I feel like we should recognize these artists a little bit more, and we should also definitely go back and revisit the work of these particular singers. So the criteria that I used for this was their songs peaked in the 1990s, and they sadly also left us unexpectedly in the 1990s. Also, that these particular artists have somewhat of an obscure fan base, and their music pops up every now and then in pop culture. So I'm going to do it in descending order. So these are the three artists that I picked. So number three is Ephraim Lewis. Now, Ephraim Lewis is from England. He had his album came out. His album, the name of the album was Skin, and one of the songs from that album was Drowning in Your Eyes. I remember listening to the song. I think the video came on not too much MTV, but maybe VH1. VH1 was one of the video stations back in the 1990s. And I remember his melodic voice, sweet, definitely sweet, smooth voice. And if I'm not mistaken, Kevin Bacon was one of the people that had discovered him, that was producing something. And sadly, Ephraim Lewis died here in the United States at the tender age of 26. There's some mystery around his death. Even though his death is deemed suicide, is definitely something that occurred during a commotion. The police got involved. There was tasering. He fell off of a balcony. He was in the hospital for a number of days, and they decided to definitely take him off of the ventilators and the life giving machines. And actually, they took him off the day of my birthday, March 18th, 1994. So I was like 20 years old, the day I turned 20 years old. So this particular artist, beautiful voice, sadly taken too soon. So that is my number three. My number two artist is the Reverend Paul Jones. Now, the Reverend Paul Jones had an amazing song that I still listen to today. A number of people in Christendom still listen to, and the song is called I Won't Complain. Now, what's interesting about this is that the song was released commercially after Reverend Paul Jones' death. Reverend Paul Jones was born in Texas, and sadly there was a home invasion, and during that home invasion he was murdered. He was murdered at the age of, I believe, 30 years old, that he was murdered. This happened in 1990. The song I Won't Complain, which is a beautiful song that a lot of gospel artists have redone. I think that his version, the original version, is the best version of the song. So definitely go ahead and revisit that. And so I really haven't heard too many of his other works that have come out, but definitely I Won't Complain as a gospel song by the Reverend Paul Jones is an amazing song. I would definitely say go ahead, revisit that particular song, that version of the song, the version of the song. And again, it's a beautiful, beautiful song. So Reverend Paul Jones taken away from us too soon at the age of 30 in the 1990s, 1990, and then his music didn't come out until 1993. That is my number two choice. Now we're moving along to an honorable mention. This previously was my number two choice, but because of the criteria, they had to have peaked in the 1990s, they had to have left us in the 1990s, and they still have an obscure fan base. I really wanted to put this person on the list, but they really peaked in the 1980s, and they were pretty much famous in their home country throughout the 1990s, and they sadly left us in the year 2000. And that artist, that singer is Alfra Haza. Now, Alfra Haza, I was introduced to Alfra Haza by my brother. You guys know that he is one of the, if not the biggest musical influence in my life. And he came home with this particular album, and the name of the song from that, it was a remix. You know, Detroit, home of techno, a lot of remixing, and the name of that song is Im Neen Alu, Im Neen Alu, and that means if the gates are locked. She also had a great dance album, a dance song called Galbi, which in Hebrew and in Arabic means my heart. And she just has a beautiful, beautiful voice. Now, for those of you who are fans of Alfra Haza, you not only know her for the remixes and the techno songs, the dance songs of the late '80s, early '90s, but you also are familiar with her work in The Prince of Egypt. She did Deliver Us. She sang the song Deliver Us in the movie The Prince of Egypt. Beautiful voice. She sadly died in the year 2000 of an AIDS related illness. She kept her illness secret, of course. That was understandable, but yeah, she died. Uh, she was in her early 40s when she died, so she had a wonderful, wonderful music history, working with a bunch of different artists. You guys can definitely go ahead and research Alpha Haza. I would definitely suggest that you listen to the mixes of Inin Alu and Galbi, because I still have those in my Spotify. I still dance hard to those particular songs, and sadly, she is no longer with us, but she is definitely, her work is definitely worth revisiting. So that's my honorable mention for this list. Now for the number one pick, which really should be no surprise to any of us. He peaked in his album, peaked in the 90s. Sadly, he left us in the 90s by an accidental drowning. I actually didn't find out about his death. I graduated in 1996, and I hadn't heard from him. And then I looked up and found out that he had sadly died. He passed away with an accidental drowning in Memphis, Tennessee. He was born in Anaheim, California, and actually his father was a famous 1960s, 1970s singer-songwriter, but he himself, to me, is his songs still resonate even to this day, even 30 years later, and that artist is Mr. Jeff Buckley. Jeff Buckley's album Grace, I remember playing this album my senior year at the University of Michigan, just playing it over and over again. His voice, beautiful voice, guitar playing, excellent, just everything about Jeff Buckley. If you are a Jeff Buckley fan, then this is no surprise to you. Then you already know this. You know that he left us way early. You know that his music just was really on the peak. If he had been able to continue here on this earth, we know that he would have done wonderful, wonderful things and would have had many more albums and would have been one of the greatest. He really was on the road to being one of the greatest singer songwriters that was out there. And I wanted to make sure that I did mention this because I listen to his music quite often. And actually, I want to say about 10 or so years ago, a fan wrote a play, a musical play. They took Romeo and Juliet and they set that particular play to the music of Jeff Buckley. They came here in San Diego. Me and my friend Lisa, we were able to see this particular play. We were actually introduced to some of the music that Jeff Buckley that he recorded, but he was never able to put out there in an album. And so posthumously, his music is out there. But again, Jeff Buckley, his album Grace, I play his album Grace so much. That album was on the top of the albums that I listened to the most in my 20s, in the 1990s, in the mid to late 1990s, along with albums Songs of Faith and Devotion by Depeche Mode in the 90s, 10 by Pearl Jam, listen to that quite often. Let's see, I have another list. Traveling Without Moving by Jamiroquai. Listen to that album nonstop. Also, Peace Beyond. Well, it was Peace Beyond Passion by Misha Ndegeocello. Love that album. Beautiful, beautiful album. These are artists that are still with us. And also, Southern Harmony and Music Companion by which is by Black Crows. So those are the albums that I listened to constantly in the 90s, and I can say Jeff Buckley's Grace was right up there to of the albums that I just played, the CDs albums, right? The CDs that I just played over and over and over again. So you guys, these are the artists who sadly left us, who left us way too soon, and when their music was right on a peak. So again, number three, Ephraim Lewis. Number two would be Reverend Paul Jones. Honorable mention, Alfred Haza. And the number one is Jeff Buckley. You guys, thank you so much for allowing me to share this with you. I am going to post some of these music on my Instagram page. You know me, I take a picture and then I have the music that accompanies that because of copyright issues on different platforms. But I want you guys to be able to share and to see the music that I'm speaking of. And I'll be back. We'll talk more about music, obscure music. We'll talk more about obscure films. We'll talk more about all the things that have touched our hearts and that is worth revisiting. Okay, you guys, toodle pip. Love you, and I will see you next time.